So there are big developments tonight in the fatal shooting on Alec Baldwin's movie set that took the life of cinematographer Helena Hutchins. The Santa Fe County Sheriff saying the gun used by Baldwin during the incident discharged a live round. Meanwhile, the district attorney saying the question of how live rounds got loaded into the gun will be a factor in determining possible criminal charges. And the assistant director who handed Baldwin the weapon admitting he didn't fully check it. So let's bring in now Dutch Merrick. He's the armor on Euphoria, very popular show. Thanks for joining us. Jeffrey Harris is here as well, an attorney who has represented victims of film and television set injuries. Happy to have you as well. So good evening to both. Jeffrey,
Thanks.
I'm going to start with you. The DA says how live rounds got into the gun will be a key factor in bringing charges here. Do you think that we could see criminal charges in this case?
I really do. I mean, if you look at what happened on this set, you have a situation where live ballistic rounds were allowed to migrate onto a movie set, and it's always highly likely on a movie set that someone's going to be, if you're using firearms to shoot scenes, that someone's going to be pointing a firearm at another person. And if you add those two things together, the high probability that a gun is going to be pointed at someone and the fact that live ballistic rounds are allowed on set, that's the kind of conduct that rises to the level of gross negligence, which is what you need in order to have a criminal charge. And I really do think someone's ultimately going to get indicted in this case.
So who, in the line of people who were there, gross negligence by whom?
Well, I mean, they're going to have to piece it together. Obviously, the armor has responsibility for making sure that that gun doesn't make it to the actor's hand. That's the primary responsibility of the armor. And the first assistant director is the person on a set who's primarily charged with safety. And if the first assistant director isn't doing his job, those are both deviations from, what a normal person would do. And it rises to the level of recklessness because that deviation is likely to result in injury. So those two people, I think, are definitely going to be a focus of the investigation. But then ultimately, the DA is going to have to figure out how that round got into that gun. I mean, it's clear that the armorer and the first AD didn't inspect the gun and find out that the round was in there, but somebody put it in there. Somebody ultimately put that round in that weapon, and that person also, I mean, I'm presuming that the DA is going to do their job and they're going to figure out who that is, but I think that person is also likely to be indicted for some form of criminal negligence.
Dutch, let's bring you in. This is what you do. In this conversation that we've just had, what do you want to add to it?
Well, it's unconscionable that a live round would make it onto a movie set at all, much less into a hero prop gun. The chain of events that would have had to occur, it's hard to fathom. We have so many safety checks on the way to the set, and there's what we call a chain of custody, that the guns stay in the possession of the armor, all the way from the locking safe in the prop truck or the gold room, and they walk it out to the set. They're always under their care. They're the only ones that handle the gun, and they get it right to the actor. The first AD can oversee that, and they can take a look at the ammo and the gun, and we can show it to the actor, but it's a relationship between the armorer and the actor. It's obviously, it was a bit of chaos that day. Some of the crew had walked off, and they were replacement crews, so that means people were sitting idle. They had gone 3 weeks without a paycheck, and we know that they had been working really long days, 14 plus hours. So, and then we find out, unbelievably, that someone went off and shot actual live rounds out of a prop gun near the set. So is it a leftover from the shooting, the recreational shooting during the break, or a deliberate round in the gun? It's hard to imagine, but the safety steps are in place. The armor would have checked it before it went off the cart, and the first AD would have verified it, and they would have handed it to the actor. That did not happen.
As you are sitting here talking about this, and all of these new revelations come out, what are you thinking about? This is highly unusual, right? Especially for someone to be possible target practice, as we have heard, and then the AD saying, well, I don't think I checked it fully. This is extremely unusual.
It's very unusual, and you know what? I'm sorry. We shoot millions, literally millions of rounds, blank rounds in Hollywood, and we've been doing it for over 100 years. And it's a very safe process. We're used to it. We block it out very carefully. We know everyone knows when that gun has a blank in it because we call it out, hot gun, as you heard cold gun, which implied it was empty. So we'll call out a hot gun on command. It'll be the last thing that happens before the camera rolls. We'll get the scene, and then the armor's the first one in to clear the gun immediately when they call cut. And then everything is safe as possible. So something like this, it was a major breakdown because there's so many safety checks along the way. It's really hard to fathom how this was allowed to happen.
Hey, quickly, just to show our viewers what you're talking about, Dutch, I want you to show, because you have some examples here of a safety, and then we'll get back to Jeffrey here because I want to talk about the legal angle here. But between a studio safety blank and a dummy round, show us what you got.
So a studio safety blank might look something like this, and you can see there's a crimped end on the end of it, and it looks almost like the end of a hot dog where it's pinched off, or a sausage. Now that's an unfired blank, safety blank round, and I'm going to show you next a fired safety blank round. You can see that there's it's open, it's been punched open, and it's very obvious, and it's about half of the weight because there's no powder. Then I'll show you what a dummy round looks like. A dummy, this is the Hollywood magic, it looks like a real bullet. It has the lead in front, it has the brass casing, but there's no gunpowder in it, and there's no primer. Now, to add to the safety, we also add a little BB inside. You'll never hear it, never see it on camera, but any crew member can put it to their ear, and I'll put it to my microphone. You can almost hear a little rattle.
We hear it.
That's how we know. We can pick it up and rattle it. I also read in one of the reports that the AD noticed the rounds that had holes in them. So in my experience, it's not very common on set to have dummy rounds that have a hole, but what they can do is they can drill a hole right through the side of it, and it lets people know that it's a dummy round. So that would be dressed into the cylinder of the revolver.
Hey, listen, Jeffrey, I have to go. What happens next now?
Well, there's going to be 3 investigations. You've got the OSHA people looking to see whether safety regulations were followed. You've got the criminal investigation, and then presumably if the family decides to do so, there'll be a civil investigation to determine whether someone was civilly negligent. And all of those things kind of work on parallel tracks.
You guys have been great. Jeffrey, we'll have you back. We'll continue to talk about it. Dutch, you as well. I really appreciate you guys joining us. Let's hope that this never happens again and they put even more safety precautions in place. But listen, there were a lot. It looks like they just weren't followed here. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you, guys.